Can you hear me in there? Are we on? Can you hear me now? Look out! Here we go. Well, we're on. Thank you, Wikiman Santos. So we'll just take it step by step. We're having a little problem out here today, but thank you, Jesus. We're on the air, it looks like. If we're speaking in a foreign language or anything like that, send us a call. We're live today out here at Mount Huth at the Patriot Station, 1410 AM. And we've had a couple pre-records and a couple weeks we haven't been on because there's been technical problems. It's been quite an ordeal. But here we are. We're sitting up here. It looks like it might rain. Nice and cool out today. Part of the Obama resistance. We're still resisting the character that's still trying to overthrow the government, Mr. Barack Obama, and his other fella, Michelle, is packing by his side. And so you can call us today at 742-5555. That's a 530 area code, 742-5555. I want to give a shout out to the people over there in Hagerman, Idaho. I couldn't even find the price of gas over there in Hagerman on Gas Buddy this week. I don't know whether they don't get any gas over there anymore, but maybe our friends can shoot us a text and say, what's the cheap gas over there? We've been keeping track of the gas prices because we have the highest gas prices in the nation in California, and they're going to continue to climb according to my sources. We're going to go over $4 a gallon. And some of you folks voted for this. Just remember the cap and trade and remember the gas increase because we just ran out of money in California to fix the roads. And then there's the cap and trade, which you know what cap and trade is? That means even though global warming isn't true, we got to pretend like it is. And then there's this government bureaucracy that just comes up with wanting certain money from us. And so they're adding on more taxes on the price per gallon. So Marysville this last week was $3.31 a gallon. Oroville $3.29. Huntsville, Texas $2.57. Casa Grande, Arizona $2.51. So if you want to listen to us clearer, say if you're out in a fringe area that our signal doesn't reach so hot, you can go on our website at kmycradio.com. I don't know whether you want to check our live stream. Are we on live stream? We're good. We might be. If you can check that. If not, my friend Chris Starkey with One Eye Blind Media has been posting for the last several months this show to his website or his YouTube site, his YouTube channel called One Eye Blind Media. So you can go there probably this evening and catch this show, and it'll be a little bit different because he has to delete the clips that we use here. We use them legal here. He can't use them over there at YouTube because copyright infringement. So we want to follow. Oh, yeah, we got the thumbs up. We're on the radio. We're on the web, the World Wide Web, broadcasting right now. So if you're out there in the distant areas of the foothills or Butte County, Colusa County, whatever, you can tap into us. Let's see. What else do we need to say to get this thing off the ground? I think we covered everything. We're going to be here for 3 hours if you're just new to this show. And then after that, there is a talk show, Sports Talk. And then our friend Zach, he comes in. Is Zach still coming in at 6 o'clock? Zach comes in at 6. He used to help us out here at this show. He's from Nevada County. He comes down and does another sports talk show and at 6 o'clock tonight. So thank you for listening. Again, if you want to call in and correct me or fix me or remind me, you can dial us up at 742-5555. So I want to mention right off, I was talking to Monty Hecker, who runs Universal Elite Security, and we were talking this week, and he said, Lou, we're getting some people wanting jobs from us because of your radio show. So I thought, hey, way to go. Somebody heard the show, and then somebody told it to somebody else, said, you ought to go out there and get a job. So the guy went out there and So they're training him to add him to the group. And then I saw on Facebook that the security company is posting that they got jobs, and I thought, way to go! They're getting in social media, so they're not only on their website, but they're going on social media. So if you want a job, you want to get a career, more than a job, you want to get in a career. Maybe you want to go into law enforcement, or you want to go into being in security business. Maybe you want to get your feet wet, maybe eventually start your own security business. So you can check at Elite Universal Security, and they will help you. They will help you get started. So they have all kinds of classes coming up, and I'm just trying to scroll down here. May 12th and 13th, and then May 26th and 27th. If you want to get a concealed weapon permit, or you want to get some training on being able to handle a firearm, they're going to have classes on those 2 weekends coming up, May 12th and 13th, May 26th and 27th. So they have all kinds of classes. In fact, Monty told me that the guy that contacted them needed a little training, and they just are getting him hooked up. And with the background training he needs to qualify for being an official security guy. So get the guard card. There's a guard card training, pepper spray training, handcuff training, taser certifications, all kinds of stuff. So I was interested, and I was listening to the, we're over here in Yuba County. I don't know whether I mentioned that, eastern Yuba County. If you're out here in Placer County, or I know some people listen down there in the Lincoln area. So we have a sheriff's race in both counties up here where we're kind of setting on this radio station. In Yuba County, there's a sheriff's race, and in Sutter County, there's all kinds of talk. Some of the discussions, or there's been these, what do they call, forums or debates. There's been these discussions about, well, how should we protect our schools, and how should the sheriff operate, and all this kind of stuff. And I noticed the superintendents in Sutter County, there's a race, 3 people running for office over there, superintendent of schools for the county. And so the question of safety came up. And, they have these stock kind of answers. But the bottom line is, people are too pussy about being politically correct. That, people can't speak their mind anymore, be honest. People live in fear. Do you know that? Most people just live in total fear. And so there's all these things. Well, we just want to follow the law, and we're going to just do our very best. I think, ridiculous. So anyway, I was listening to the Sutter County Sheriff's debate with the 3 sheriff's candidates, and Brandon Barnes was asked this question, or all 3 of the candidates. Brandon Barnes was asked a question about how do we secure our schools. And so there's been this bill going through the assembly to allow and pay for an armed guard to be on the school campus. I thought, well, that's a good start, but one armed person for campuses that are, some of them campuses are, these high school campuses, some of them are like 15, 20 acres, buildings all over the place. How are you going to one guard do jack? Anyway, Barnes brought up the fact of putting non-sheriff security force on the campuses, and brought up the fact that it costs half the price. And I thought, hey, come on, that's awesome. And I appreciated him thinking that way, because so often government just always thinks they're the answer. Just more and more, hire more people, expand, and that's the answer to everything. And it isn't the answer to everything, and it's a lousy way to think of in terms of protecting the population. If people are armed, that's the best way to protect the population. And if you allow teachers to have a right to carry a weapon, that is another way. But to put, when people always say, oh, well, we just can't afford it. Well, if you can put a trained, armed guard on that campus that isn't hired by the government, where you have to pay all the pensions and all the ridiculous union benefits, You can do that according to Captain Barnes from the Yuba County Sheriff's Department, who's running for sheriff in Sutter County. You can do that for half the cost. I like that thinking because we need some, this thing. Have you ever noticed how politicians always tell you what they can't do? And whether or not you like Trump, he's actually getting some stuff done because he says we can do it. We're just going to do it, right? And then he does it. And people say, I can't believe, we're like having peace in Korea. Oh, we're going to move the embassy in Israel. Oh, we're going to do something on the border. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to arrest MS-13 people. Oh, we can add more judges to move these people to the immigration quicker, right? So anyway, I was told I work with Brandon Barnes, in the Yuba County Jail where he serves now. He's the captain of the jail. And when he got appointed to that position, Sheriff Durfer, because I do classes in there each week, we do on 3 different days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we do classes throughout the day. And so I was having some frustration in the jail, getting things done. And Sheriff Durfer said, Lou, I'm going to appoint a new guy to run the jail. I said, oh, yeah, who's that? He said, Brandon Barnes, you know him. And I said, I met him because of the trauma intervention work we do out on patrol. We meet a lot of patrol people. And he says, oh, you'll like him. He's a get-it-done type guy. So I thought when Brandon, I was watching on the internet one night, and I watched a live stream of this sheriff's debate, and I was fascinated by the debate, and I listened to quite a bit of it. But I'm very interested. It's amazing to me. If we said, how should we protect the governor? I'll tell you, they'd already do it. They have an armed guard around the governor all the time, and he drives the governor around all the time. In fact, he used to work for Yuba City Police Department, and he protects the governor. And the Highway Patrol is charged with protecting the Capitol. Did you know that? And so anytime we want to protect a political person, or we want to protect the bank, or anything of real value, we always just put armed guards, right? But somehow we get all funky thinking and get confused when we think about the most precious commodity we got, which is our kids. And we can't seem to think through, oh, my God, we could have a police officer on campus, but he can't be armed, God forbid. You know something? People, at some point, you just have to get past the stupid channel and get on reality, right? And so there's that. Hey, I wanted to mention that next week, for all you folks that are a little slow, it's Mother's Day, they tell me. Is that true? Is that what you say, Wiki? Not this weekend, next weekend. Are you on it? Are you paying attention? They tell me it's next weekend. So my mom came to pass, so I'm not on the hook right now for this. So if you got, are you right? Are you paying attention? Oh, he's pulling out some money over there next door. I think I'm enlightening people out here at the station. So if it's Mom's Day, and so people better get organized and get doing something. Get to doing something. So, well, I have been fascinated, as I say, by the school security issue and the responses by the Sheriff's Department in that discussion on how to protect the schools. I've been noticing more fences. I used to notice fences around schools that you could walk right around, or you could, the gate was always open, and I thought, what good's that fence? But now I see more and more fences around all these schools. We spend all this time with these fences. Fences don't do jack. If a guy wants to get in, you don't have an armed guard. Somebody needs to shoot somebody. Somebody needs to shoot somebody dead. That's what needs to happen. So anyhow, the reason I brought this up was that I was talking to Monty Hecker about it with Elite Security, and I said, Monty, that's your gig right there, man. You need to get in on that school protection thing. So he said, you know, Lou, a lot of times law enforcement, they turn different types of security issues over to us because they have other things they need to be taken care of, like a gang shooting. So there you have it. So if you want a job or you need some protection and you can't, like I noticed, in fact, I just noticed that Sheriff Durfer announced that because of they can't afford to fund the sheriff's department over there in Yuba County because the supervisors took the budget of the sheriff's department, spent it on other stuff. They misappropriated the funds. Did you know that? And so now we are short-staffed over there at that sheriff's department, and it isn't going to get any better. So finally, Sheriff Durfer had to bite the bullet and just said, you know, for a lot of different kinds of calls, you're on your own. You can, like, post it on the internet, right? Go on the internet and file a report. And they listed that in the Peel Democrat the other day. So we're just not going to respond to a lot of those calls, alarms, alarm calls, and a variety of things. Vandalism, you'll just have to file it yourself. So I'm okay with that. You know, there's no change in the heart of the supervisors. Those dudes have taken the money away from the sheriff's department. You know, the sheriff's department is the primary reason we organize as a county or a city is to have protection, right? Property, liability, and protection. Protect our property and our person. And to me, if the government can't provide that, the party's over. I noticed that the city of Marysville are all euphoric about turning on the fountain. Hey, screw the fountain. Who cares about a fountain in Ellis Lake in lights? I want law enforcement. I want fire, and I want the streets paved. Forget about the fountain, right? This is nonsense. They can't even keep the lake clean over there. So when government has screwed up so bad that they can't even field a law enforcement operation to protect us, we're pretty much screwed up. And so that's what the situation here is, and particularly it's dire in Yuba County. And the Yuba County supervisors over a long period of time, it isn't just the last couple of years, it's been coming. In about 2007, 2008, the supervisors gave themselves about a 50 to 75% raise. They gave themselves raises when they changed hats over there at the Yuba County Water Agency. They gave themselves raises. They get about $15,000 for switching hats and go a year to go over there and sit on that water agency board. Those guys don't know jack diddly about water. It's like, why don't you just get? I thought this was about public service. It's about, like, you know who the public service is all about, the public serving the supervisors. So anyway, I told Monty Hecker, who runs Elite Security, I said, Monty, this is a great opportunity for you to step up and take over these situations. So there you have that. You know, I noticed the other day that, do you remember Al Capone? Al Capone was a mafia gangster, and they tried for years to figure out, much like a good cop does when they find out somebody's doing wrong, they try to figure out a way to catch him, right? Get the evidence on him. So you'd think that they would have got Al Capone for murder or something like that. But you know what they finally got him on? Not paying his IRS taxes, Internal Revenue Service taxes. And they put him in prison for 11 years. You know how much he owed? I read where he owed $215,000. Now, I know back then, I don't know, it was the 1920s or 30s. It's a lot more money now. But old Al Sharpton, you know, Slick Al, the Reverend Al Sharpton, he owes the IRS $4.5 million, and he ain't seen a day in jail yet. In fact, the only threat they had was to take his passport from him because they couldn't. I guess you owe a lot of money, they can just jerk your passport. So Al owes 4.5, no jail, and poor Al Capone, rest his soul, 11 years in prison for $215,000. Are we running ahead? How are we doing on time? Oh, we got a couple of minutes. Okay, I thought you gave me 1 minute. So we're good. We got all kinds of time. all right, I was getting a little nervous here because the clock said one thing and the human being said something else. So I thought, I don't know who to trust here. All right, well, I'm going to talk in a minute here about, I'm just going to give a little intro and we'll start after the break. We're going to go on for 2.5 more hours, but I'm going to talk about some local election issues over in Sutter County. I've lived here all my life. I'm almost 100 years old. And I have never in my life seen a county, I read the news. I've been reading the newspaper since I could read. And then the internet. And so I follow news from 58 counties. You hit the high points on some of these other counties, but I have never seen such a screwed up mess as Sutter County. Do you agree with me, the folks over there in Sutter County? Are you even paying attention? Or maybe you just think, hey, if the toilet flushes and the water runs and the hot water works, we're good to go. As long as somebody isn't stealing out of my bank account, I really don't care how they spend all our tax dollars, right? But I'm telling you what, I look around over there for a solid department in that Sutter County government. And, kind of when you walk on the floor of a house and there's some dry rot under there and it's soft, you think, I'm going to fall through this floor. I don't think there's a real solid spot over there in all those departments. It's a pretty scary thought. It's chaotic over there right now. And so this election has kind of brought it all kind of to a simmer, right? It's like wanting to boil over there. And I want to talk about the district attorney's race. I thought the Appeal Democrat had a fascinating article this May 4th. Oh, by the way, did you know that this is Karl Marx's 200th birthday? Today. He was born in 1818. And I'm going to talk about him a little bit later, but the kids on campus just think he's so cool, but they don't ever want to go live in any of the countries that follow his way. So we'll be right back. We're going to listen to a couple spots here, and then we'll be right back.
Hello, Liberty-loving patriots. This is Chrisanne Hall, Liberty's lobbyist and founder of Liberty First University. You're listening to KMYC 1410 AM, The Patriot. The founding fathers and mothers didn't pledge their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, so we could sit around and rest on their laurels. They expected us to exercise our God-given rights and to practice eternal vigilance, to monitor and hold accountable our fellow citizens to whom we delegate power. The federal government is not the supreme law of the land. The Constitution is. To learn more about the Constitution and to help get the word out about how our founders truly wanted this republic to operate, be sure to tune in to Live with Lou every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon. Visit me at chrisannhall.com and at libertyfirstuniversity.com.
Check out the Territorial Dispatch. Papers are weekly and can be obtained free at distribution or by mail through subscription. It's only locally owned and operated newspaper in the region. The paper is the rest of the story. And also check out the E-Territorial. It's an online version of the Territorial Dispatch which features local news and events for the Yuba Sutter, Colusa, and Nevada County areas. You'll also find daily and breaking news updates, current traffic, and weather information, along with a calendar of local events. Visit the E-Territorial at eterritorial.com.
All right, welcome back. Well, we're feeling fortunate today, making it half hour through this day, and we're plowing on for 2.5 more hours. Lou Benninger here, Live with Lou. Thankful for the wiki man who got us up and going today. I was talking before the break about Sutter County, and when people from out of the area, news people, attorneys, talk about Sutter County, they ask a question. What in the world is going on up there? It's just like they're saying, I can't believe that's happening in your district attorney's office. I can't believe that's happening at the Board of Supervisors. I can't believe that's happening at the Sheriff's Department. Just on and on. I can't believe that's happening back when there was a political carpet bombing of Auditor Controller Robert Stark. People said, I can't believe that's happening. They went after him and spent taxpayer money for 10 years to destroy a guy, and then they dropped all charges against him. Unbelievable. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. At one time, Carl Adams, the district attorney, misappropriated at least $50,000 of drug abuse funds to prosecute a guy that had nothing to do with drugs. That would be Robert Stark. The list of bizarre behavior, corruption, and it's interesting when you bring it up, officials act like you violated some kind of secret order. You can't talk about those things, right? Or how dare you bring up the fact that somebody misappropriated $100,000 or $80,000 or tried to destroy a person's life like Robert Stark. How dare, well, or they just ignore it. They just ignore what you say, right? People talk like they're a person of integrity, and then they call a business those effers. It's unbelievable. It's like when you get away from the community and look back and get a little distance on you, it's just like shocking. It's totally shocking. People just decide to make up their own rules. There's rules of accounting, and then the county administrator, not the current one, but previous one, just totally makes up his own accounting rules on millions of dollars on a solar project and said, oh, we don't want to run this through the auditor controller or the treasurer. We're just handling it over here because we trust in ourselves more than we trust those people. Just unbelievable. Just make up rules. And then if as a citizen you violate the law, you do something wrong, you don't get your taxes paid on time or something, it's like totally unforgiving, right? So a number of years ago, we had a district attorney, Carl Adams, who served here for over 3 decades. Amazing. And, I think, somebody the other day told me, he said, we were discussing a person that had screwed up, and they said, well, we should have known about it, and people should have paid attention. And I said, well, a lot of times you don't, hindsight is 20/20, and you just believe the best about people and hope the best for people, and there's nothing wrong with that, and trust people, give them trust until you realize your trust has been broken, right? Or then you have to go back, and then you look backwards, hindsight, and it's like, oh, I should have seen that, or I guess I did see those signs, but I didn't know it meant that. So I had that experience with Carl Adams personally, but I didn't know how deep he had run off the rails. But Carl Adams, after over 30 years in office, he ended up being accused and found actually guilty, never was prosecuted, by the state of California for misappropriating victim witness funds. And then he was accused or at least he was a person of interest in an arson of a prostitute's house. And then admitted to having sex with her, or she admitted having sex with him, and then he lied about it. Anyway, it was a big mess, right? And so he resigned, or as he said, he retired. So the interesting thing is, to give a little history to this, the supervisors, none of the supervisors at that time ever made a public statement like, we're concerned about this, this is a terrible thing, we're going to get to the bottom of it. They really, because they just used the scapegoat of he's an elected official, it really doesn't have any impact on us. Well, it did have an impact because we paid out $150,000 sexual harassment case to a woman in his office. And the supervisors had to approve that. But one of the supervisors at that time was James Gallagher, who is now our assemblyman. James has coasted for many years as a well-liked homeboy, blonde, blue-eyed boy, or maybe he's blonde and brown-eyed. I don't know what he is, but he's kind of been a favored son around here, and that's not a bad thing. But it was interesting how James, who was an attorney and in his trade, never did a thing about saying we should investigate that office after Adams left. We should pay for an audit of that office. It's almost like the supervisors wanted to protect themselves and Carl Adams. So nobody ever investigated it. Then when Amanda Hopper was elected to office and Nathan Black was elected to office, the new auditor controller, as Robert Stark retired, their discussion was we're gonna audit this office. So whether the new department auditor that was hired just hasn't had time to get to it, or they decided not to, it never has happened. The books all the way back, the state came in and audited just 2 years and came up with $80,000 in funds that needed to be paid back to the state of California because they were misappropriated. Then another $50,000 we know was misappropriated through information from the Auditor Controller's Office. Drug abuse funds. So we hoped for the best when Amanda Hopper was elected 4 years ago. And also Nathan Black. We thought, oh, there's two solid people, and maybe we can build around them if we could change some of the folks that are ne'er-do-wells on the Board of Supervisors you can't trust. Maybe we could, and maybe if we get a new good county administrator, we could rebuild the integrity of the county. Now, one department after another has hit the wall. The Sheriff's Department, we had the Lewis McElfresh scandal where he was allowing his adopted daughter to have sex with all kinds of people. He was involved in all kinds of weird stuff. He ended up getting prosecuted. All kinds of people have been involved in all kinds of stuff. People in the Sheriff's Department have been involved in group sex orgies. People in the DA's office were involved in group sex orgies. Swinging, switching partners. Unbelievable, right? It's a free country, right? They were adults. McElfresh's daughter was a minor. So you just think, what in the world's going on? You know, it's one thing to have people using some bizarre behavior and they work at Home Depot or Applebee's. It's another thing when they're prosecuting you in court and you're trusting them to be honest when they're cheating on their husband or cheating on their wife, and you're expecting them to be honest. Or they're a cop and and they got all kinds of they got 35 pounds of combat gear around their hips, and you're counting on them to be people of integrity, people that are honest. And yet you know they're cheating on their wife or they're pulling a gun on their wife. Look out. So it's interesting when you look, like my friend Dr. Cassidy served Yuba County Jail for 25 years. There never was a death there in those 25 years. During that time, I think there maybe were 6 deaths in the Sutter County Jail. I want you to think about that. People come to jail. Yeah, it's a high-risk group. Some are mentally ill. I'm in the jail 3 days a week. I'm in the jail more than the sheriffs are. So all I'm saying is it's a tough group of people that are living there. And everybody is on, they're super vigilant, trying to keep tabs on everything, health-wise, mental health-wise, everything. So when you have half a dozen people die and just lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and of course they pay them off, and one supervisor said, well, you know, that's what we have insurance for. I want you to think about your insurance policies when a supervisor said, well, that's what we have insurance for, just pay these people off if it's an employee that's dissatisfied or or somebody's family member that's dissatisfied with the way their daughter or son was treated and he died in jail. There are co-pays, and if you have your home insurance and you keep filing claims on your insurance, what happens? Your policies, they go up. Policy premiums go up. Co-pays go up. So we have one thing after another failure in our government system. And Then when Amanda Hopper took over, just all of a sudden we have the Anu Chopra case, and one person after another suing the department, just one controversy after another. And, you know, I live over in Yuba County. I live in Marysville. That's right, for you out there in the boondocks and other counties, we're just a river apart. The two county seats of Yuba City, Marysville are just one river width apart. So we're basically one community. Under the reign or the tenure of Pat McGrath, district attorney, who's retiring now this year from Yuba County, I don't even remember a lawsuit. There have been no deaths in the Yuba County Jail until Dr. Cassidy retired. It's just been pretty mellow over here. And you think when there's one problem after another, people getting fired from that DA's office, people then suing the DA's office, you have to wonder what in the world is going on, right? So now this year, there's a competition. There's no competition for the DA's race in Yuba County, but there is in Sutter. And so a former employee of that office, Chris Carlos, who left there during the Carl Adams days and went to be working in public defense work, he's running against Amanda Hopper. And so I appreciated the article that the Appeal Democrat included on May 4, written by Rachel Rosenbaum, who has done a lot of good work and done a public service really for the people of Yuba Sutter counties. And I found it fascinating to read that they had a question and then they have answers in the paper. You can look it up if you want. And it says an issue has been made of the number of cases filed versus the size of the budget as a measure of efficiency in the district attorney's office. Is that a valid measurement? So in other words, Yuba and Sutter counties they're somewhat similar. Yuba County's poorer county, a little bit smaller population, maybe. About the same square miles, over 600 square miles. And but I would think that Yuba County probably has, at least law enforcement tells me, has more cases and more gnarly cases. I haven't counted myself. So Chris Carlos, the candidate running against the incumbent, Amanda Hopper, says in this paper, in this article, said it's important to recognize the fact that the Sutter County Department budget is about $1.7 million more than the Yuba County District Attorney's budget. Now, I thought that was new to me. That was new information to me, and I thought, whoa, that's a lot of money. And then he says, in his opinion, Yuba County does a better job prosecuting people. He said because the attorneys are career prosecutors, have experience, and have gone to trial. In other words, they have trial experience. Now, I sat in court here a few weeks ago trying to speak on behalf of someone I was trying to help out, a drug addict. And so I had to sit there for half a day because I was waiting for this person to come forward to be tended to by the system. And one attorney after another from Pat McGrath's office went up there and handled cases, criminal cases. And I was impressed how efficient it was and how professional they were. And so so this caught my eye that the budget in Sutter County is $1.7 million more. I thought, what? You can do a lot of with that money. So anyway, it says they're much more thorough in Yuba County and on half the budget, according to Carlos. Now, it's fascinating to me. In the private sector, if you run your own attorney firm, there's pressure to run a very efficient firm, right? To have your legal secretaries and your investigators and all your people who are doing the work to be very efficient. But in government, there's no real push to do that. And if you can convince supervisors to okay your budget, you know, a good bureaucrat grows his department, right? That's what bureaucrats do. They make bigger departments. They are not interested in shrinking their department. They want more budget, more people, more people. That's the goal of a bureaucrat. It's just the opposite of what you'd want as a taxpayer. As a taxpayer, you want less government, right? Less taxes. But bureaucrats, their goal is to have a bigger government. So in response to this question from the Appeal Democrat, Amanda Hopper said 87.5% of her department's budget is attributed to salary and benefits, of which the office has no discretion over. Well, honestly, that's a ridiculous statement, because you don't have to have as many employees. If you're handling as many cases, about the same amount as Yuba County, and you have lots more employees, you don't have any discretion. Yeah, you got to pay the people that are working for you, but you can lay them. You can get rid of people by just saying, we don't need that many. We're going to do it with less people. So I thought that's a ridiculous response. She compared her 30 employees to Yuba County's 14 employees, and then cited Sutter County's Victim Witness Department. She said Yuba County's Victim Witness provides no advocacy and has run out of probation. That is, that's not true. Yuba County's Victim Witness, for years, Sutter County Victim Witness only had two to three employees. Yuba County Victim Witness, run out of probation, has had like 10 to 15 employees. And it's interesting, I actually had a talk with Amanda Hopper about the time she was elected, and her feeling was that she thought the victim witness running under probation was a superior way to go because it was a conflict of interest to run under the DA's office. Now, in this article, she's flipped that around. And I don't know why, but they hired Tony Kildare to run their victim witness office, which was a blessing for for Sutter County, because he's a sharp operator and a great leader of that. And they have added on employees, which is great, in their victim witness department. But maybe it's just the way the Rachel Rosenbaum took this comment, and Amanda Hopper didn't mean it this way, but it sounds kind of disparaging towards Yuba County victims. They call it victim services now, not victim witness. But anyway, maybe she's saying that's the reason their budget's bigger, because they have victim witness in their budget as opposed to victim witness in the probation's budget. Maybe that's her point. I don't know what her point is. But the fact is that Carlos seems to think that it's not an efficient running office. That's a lot of money, a $1.7 million difference. So anyway, it said then Hopper said, according to the article, that Yuba County's DA investigators didn't show up at some kind of shooting because their car was in the shop. I thought, something sounds screwy about this whole. I thought, if I was a DA investigator and my government car was in the shop, I'd probably just drive over in my old Honda Element and just kind of take care of business. Wouldn't you do that, Wiki? Wiki's saying he'd do the same thing. He drives a pickup. Would you drive it if you were the investigator, you'd just take your pickup over? I don't understand this. Anyway, Carlos actually says what Amanda Hopper used to say. He says, victim witness being part of the prosecution team is a conflict of interest. It is. So anyway, I thought that was very interesting. Now, there's been a major controversy other than the two attorneys, Hopper and Carlos, seeing things different on how to run an office. There's been a lot of controversy and accusations regarding a guy named Michael Barch, who made a video and put it on YouTube, or sent it over here from wherever he is in the United States. It's a cousin of Amanda Hopper's, and accusing her of molesting him. So we're going to talk about that right when we come back. right. Well, we're starting the second hour here. It's a miracle. We're even on the air this morning. I wanted to mention the Sutter Butte's Tea Party Patriots, along with Elite Universal Security, help us stay on the air out here. And I like to keep everybody up to date on what's shaking in their meetings. And this Monday, the 7th of May, just a couple days from now, they're going to host a forum with candidates for the superintendent of schools for Sutter County. Now, there's 3 candidates, incumbent plus 2 challengers, and then Francisco Reveles is listed here from Yuba County. He does not have a competitor, so he'll go into office again unopposed. Maybe he'll be there as well. So it should be an interesting night. And so that's this Monday, 6:30 to 8:30. And the doors open at 6 o'clock as usual. It's in the Building 200 at Church of Glad Tidings campus, 1179 Eager Road, or a coordinate would be Live Oak Boulevard at Eager or Highway 99 at Eager. It's right in between the 2 highways. And it's a real comfortable and small venue where you can get up close and talk to people about their candidacy. And I would encourage you to go to this and ask people some hard questions. I know one of the things that Joe Hendricks, one of the candidates, is bringing up is the loss of programs for kids and cutbacks in Sutter County. So one of the concerns I had when I was on the board of Yuba County Office of Education, which would have been under Francisco Reveles if he had been superintendent then, was we need more practical training of kids that hate the classroom. And they want to work with their hands. They want to learn welding. They want to learn carpentry. They want to learn to be an electrician. They want to learn how to do body work on vehicles. We need to have practical skills taught in school again instead of trying to send all kids to college. And the superintendent of schools can address that, according to my friend Rick Teagarden, who did a great job at that when he was there for many years. So we'll see whether that's a topic. But that's going to go on this Monday night, and then later in the month on the 21st, which is Sutter Butte's Tea Party Patriots meet on the 1st and 3rd Monday of every month. And there's going to be another Sutter County DA's town hall. Now, I don't know, this thing has got so intense over here with the district attorney's office for Sutter County. I don't know whether these guys are survive and make it. I know, I don't know whether Amanda Hopper has actually even attended all the events so far. But so you got the DA, the Sutter County DA on the 21st of May, and you have the Sutter County superintendent candidates this Monday night. So check it out, okay? So I was talking about the fact that this race between Chris Carlos and Amanda Hopper has really got heated up. And one of the things that really got it going was a guy named Michael Barchi. I think I call him Barch, but I think it's Barchi, got an I on the end. He sent a video that was him for talking maybe for 5 minutes, talking about the fact of accusing his cousin, District Attorney Amanda Hopper, of molesting him along with some other cousins. And that video that he made was sent over here, and it started getting posted on social media. And it caused a big stir, obviously, and so there were a lot of reactions to it. One of the reactions was from a guy named Curtis Grima, who is the chief of staff of Assemblyman James Gallagher. Now, the unique thing about James Gallagher It's not unusual for state-level representatives to maybe endorse candidates, but to, in a very practical way, get involved and manipulate local central committees in different counties he represents or undermine candidates is fascinating. He's using his chief of staff, Curtis Grima, to do that. And so Curtis Grima began to post emails accusing Chris Carlos and also Amanda Hopper, the current district attorney, began to accuse Chris Carlos and her former investigator, chief investigator Jason Parker, of conspiring and putting this whole fiasco together of her cousin accusing her of molesting him and a number of kids when they were youngsters. And they also accused a lady named Liz Cervantes, who ran for office a couple of years ago for supervisor against James Gallagher's hand-picked candidate, Barbara LeVake. And so all of these people, Carlos, Parker, and Cervantes, got blamed for a smear campaign. Well, it's interesting, all of us probably have someone in our family group, I do, that has had problems either with drugs or mental health issues. And it's difficult, right? And so what the Hopper family, the extended family for Hopper, and the father of this guy, Michael Barchi, said was, hey, this is our relative, our son, our cousin, or whatever. But actually, he's a felon. He's delusional. He's mentally ill. He's had a long history of substance abuse. He's had a felony conviction. He's had this, he's had that, he's had all kinds of things. And but the interesting thing is, instead of just admitting that, like they did, they admitted that, hey, they have a cousin who has, or a nephew or whatever, that's got problems, and we love him, and we hope the best for him, but what he's saying isn't true. Grima turned around along with Amanda Hopper and blamed all these local people for this video even being created, which was totally fallacious and a deceptive thing to do. Now, when you have candidates running for city council or supervisor, that's one thing. But when you have a district attorney or you have a chief of staff of an assemblyman of the state of California being deceptive, what that does then for me, even though I can understand the discomfort of being falsely accused, in Amanda Hopper's perspective, she was falsely accused by this gentleman. And no one said that this guy isn't related to Hopper. She just said, and they just said, family members, that this guy isn't telling the truth. So it's interesting, though, when the district attorney and the chief of staff of an assemblyman for the state of California is being deceptive and not telling the truth about how this all came together. Now, if they're ignorant, that's one thing. But it doesn't, I've read the different attacking emails and posts, and it doesn't sound to me like they're just ignorant. Now, you'd think that if you're a chief of staff of an assemblyman of the state of California and you're a district attorney, you've spent some time getting educated, and you're not like the dullest knife in the drawer. So to argue like, well, we just didn't know, and we throw Carlos, Jason Parker, and Cervantes and other people under the bus because this video arrived, is just not going to wash. But that's what they want you to think. Now, the interesting thing, and on Facebook, if this is truly from the mother of Amanda Hopper, she posts a long spiel about this guy describing her nephew. And then she says, and it's interesting, well, I won't go into all the weeds on this because I don't have time, but it says, we have proof that Amanda has been cleared by legal authorities to be around children many years ago. Now, now I found that fascinating because if there's nothing to any of this, why would you have to be cleared by legal authorities many years ago? Now, I'm not saying she did anything wrong. I don't know anything about the Hoppers. All I know is that there's been all kinds of accusations regarding Amanda Hopper's ex-husband, who was involved with Aaron Easton's wife, who's a former police chief of Marysville. Aaron Easton's wife ends up dead. That's never been solved. That was supposed to be investigated by the district attorney's office and in the attorney general's office. Nothing's ever been done on it. It's been over 2 years. The death has never been resolved. That's interesting. It says, we have proof that Amanda has been cleared by legal authorities. I thought, well, obviously something had to happen, right? Or there was an accusation back in the day. So I found that interesting. Now, there's all kinds of craziness going on because we got Brian Hopper, who was interviewed and was accused of lying to the Yuba City Police Department when he was married to Amanda Hopper. There's been people that said they were all involved in like a sexual thing between couples. I don't know whether it's true or not. Like somebody said, how do you know it's true? Well, I haven't sat in anybody's bedroom in the 2 counties and watched them have sex. That's not something I'm interested in. Some people aren't interested in that and do it. So I don't know whether it's true or not, but it seems to be that there's a, in fact, I've talked to people that are people connected with the Sutter County Sheriff's Department that have done that and have been personally involved. So before you go off saying this is a bunch of hooly-hoo, I got something going on here a little bit. Now, I don't know anything about the Hoppers, Brian and his wife, or his ex-wife now. But to have the mother of Amanda say, we have proof that Amanda has been cleared by legal authorities, well, I'll tell you, no legal authority had to clear me for being around children. So something had to happen. So I don't know whether we'll ever sort this out on what's up with Michael Barchi. But I'll tell you, if I was the district attorney and had been accused of such a thing, I would have just said, you know something? He's my cousin. We were raised together. He's had a lot of problems. He's had mental health issues. And what he says isn't true. That's never happened. And I feel bad for him right now. And you just have to, right? It's difficult. When you get accused of something like that, it's difficult, right? Anybody can accuse anybody. But the way this thing has been handled with Grima, Curtis Grima, blaming everybody in the world, instead of just like saying, hey, this is a guy that's kind of run off the rail, if that's what happened. He's kind of run off the mental rail, or he's got some drug problems or whatever. And the way it was concocted is that these people that are opposing District Attorney Hopper put all this together. Now, that's just 100% false. And the fact is that this guy, Barchi, contacted an individual over here in Sutter County months ago because he was concerned about this race and wanted to tell his story. Again, whatever story anybody wants to tell can be fabricated, right? I don't know. I don't know whether it is or not. But obviously, Susan Jones' posting the other day, which went off attacking Liz Cervantes and attacking all kinds of people, Carlos, et cetera, says we have proof that Amanda was cleared by legal authorities to be around children many years ago. I thought, well, at least something may have happened, right? So the interesting thing is that Curtis Grima has been kind of throwing his weight around. I feel sorry for Curtis because he's way overweight, and he's throwing a lot of that weight around. And I'm always, like when I worked for Church of Glad Tidings under the pastor there, I was always careful how I behaved myself because I was reflecting upon him and the church, right? So either James Gallagher, the assemblyman for Yuba Sutter counties, is endorsing Grima's bizarre behavior of lying about what's going on here, or Curtis is just crazy and he can't figure out what's going on, or Mr. Gallagher's in on this and trying to like manipulate these local elections. Now, I thought it fascinating the other day. I heard that also Gallagher, even though Doug LaMalfa, who's the congressman representing the area to the north of us, and Jim Nielsen, who's the senator, state senator representing our areas here, Yuba Sutter, are both endorsing John Cox for governor as opposed to Travis Allen, because Cox has got a lot better chance of like getting into the general election. Whereas Gallagher is endorsing Travis Brown. Now, what would be in it for Gallagher, because Brown isn't going to win jack. I mean, Travis Allen is not going to win jack. It isn't going to happen for him. He may be a nice guy. The only guy that's really got a chance to edge in and get into the finals and hope for a miracle to overthrow the Democrat governor is Cox. So for Gallagher to endorse Travis Allen, there's got to be some kind of payoff for Gallagher down the road, because we know he's going to lose, and therefore so there's some kickback for Gallagher. Now, I'll just go back and say this. For Gallagher, either Gallagher is behind all this. Like, let me give you an example. Back in 1988, Barbara LeVake became a supervisor in Sutter County. And after 4 years, she was opposed for that office and lost. After serving for 4 years, she lost the race. And so that's very unusual. To beat an incumbent, to beat a person that's in office is very, very difficult, unless they like committed murder or did something really gnarly. But she lost after 4 years, and then in 1992, she was out of office. But in 2015, when Supervisor James Gallagher was elected to be an assemblyman, of all the people in that district, his district, that could have done a nice job, and even among those that actually applied and said, I would like to serve the rest of your term, a year or so, he ignored all those, and he picked a person, Barbara LeVake, who had been rejected after people tried her for 4 years and thought, I don't want her anymore, and I want somebody else. He actually, now I want you to think about when politicians say the care of the constituents is my most important role, or my motive, and they turn around and appoint someone that the constituents rejected. After trying her for 4 years, they said, I don't want her. And he turns right around and appoints her. Who do you think that benefits? Do you think that benefits the constituents or somebody that the assemblyman is connected to? Private interests, right? So when she was appointed then, Curtis Grima got involved, his chief of staff, running the campaign, In other words, even though Curtis Grima gets paid $100,000 of taxpayer money, like we pay taxes, right? And then that money is divvied up so it can pay for these assemblymen's wages and their staff. So Grima gets $100,000, but then runs his own campaign business on the side and representing these candidates. So Grima then describes Matt Conant, who's been a well-respected farmer here for many, many generations, his whole family, the Conant family, respected citizen, been on the board of the Farm Bureau. He begins describing Matt Conant that he's anti-law enforcement. And then he describes Liz Cervantes, who was also a candidate for office. Both of those people applied for Assemblyman Gallagher's supervisor job and were rejected and replaced, instead got LaVake, who had been rejected by the voters. So Grima manages her campaign and raises $170,000. That's like about over 3 times what the average supervisor race is going to probably take to run, and lost. But the interesting thing, or the thing that concerns me, like, people win and lose races. Like, most of the time, I'm always voting for people that lose. I like them, and then they lose. The issue is, to me, sometimes I'm interested more in the process than the person. It's like, how did they get elected, or how did they not get elected? Did they lie through their teeth? And Grima seems to just misstate things repeatedly. He has a problem with the truth. And a friend of mine who was interviewing him one night after a deal, Phil Enright, told me, he said, I don't care who gets elected as long as they're a Republican. I thought that's a really screwy way of looking at things. That's why I'm not interested in Republicans or the Democrats. When you think, I don't give a crap who gets, the guy could be an axe murderer as long as he's a Republican, thumbs up, baby. I say, you know something? That screwy thinking right there is what has sunk the Republican Party. And it'll sink the Democrat Party too. But that's really perverted thinking. We're going to be right back, and we'll carry on with this candidate talk here in a minute. All right. This is Lou Benninger, and you're listening to The Patriot. We're out here on Mount Huth in East Yuba County. Down here in the bunker, part of the Obama resistance. And we are are we halfway through? I guess we're halfway through the show today. We're talking about some local, in Sutter County, controversies going on. And this whole controversy about a relative of the district attorney accusing her of molesting him when they were youngsters. They were all youngsters. They're about the same age now. And so they grew up together. And the district attorney says that didn't happen. Her family says that didn't happen. But the interesting thing is the way it was handled. And so Curtis Grima, who is the chief of staff for James Gallagher, who James kind of gets the nod as Mr. Trustworthy around here. But stuff keeps coming up where people get thrown under the bus by his chief of staff, Curtis Grima. And I don't know whether Mr. Gallagher endorses Curtis Grima or not. Now, I understand that he makes about $100,000 a year. You know something? I don't blame people for wanting to make a lot of money. Some people just love that money, and it's expensive to live nowadays. More and more expensive. And so, but I need to get one of these jobs where you can double and triple dip. That's what I need. Like making almost $100,000 a year down there working in an office job. And I don't know whether he gets a per diem like James Gallagher, where they buy you a tuna fish sandwich and pay for your gasoline. But But then you can run your own business. And like Curtis Grima has this business called Sacramento Valley Solutions. And so he's a paid consultant for the Amanda Hopper campaign. Nothing wrong with that, right? People hire people to help them run a campaign. In fact, if I ran for office, maybe I would need some of the same help. Maybe I'd even hire somebody just like Curtis. So he's making $6,000, $7,000 here, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 there from different campaigns he's involved in. I found that in one way, hey, this is America. You can make more money, have side jobs, moonlight, do all that kind of thing. But the interesting thing to me is, as a taxpayer, we're like I'm maybe paying part of that check for Mr. Grima to work down there for Mr. Gallagher, because I'm over here in Yuba County and Grima is chief of staff for a guy that's representing me. So there's $100,000 going out plus tuna sandwich money, maybe gas money. I'm sure he's not running around on his own gas card. But then he runs these elections for these candidates, and he's making money. It says he's operating right out of his house here in Yuba City. Now, I feel the same way. Now, it says here that that Mr. Grima doesn't have a business license, and I don't blame him a bit. I don't like to. I wouldn't pay for a business license myself. I don't think a city ought to, or a county ought to, ask you to pay a business license. So I avoid as many licenses as I can. Permits, licenses. I build stuff without permits because I think it's just a restriction of my freedom. So I don't blame Curtis for not wanting to get a license, but it says on all the political paperwork he operates right out of the city of Yuba City. Doesn't have a license, but he's collecting thousands of dollars. Plus, I don't know how people like divide up their time. Like if you're at work for Mr. Gallagher, does he care whether you're actually working for Miss Hopper or anybody else? I don't know how that all works. But it seems like if I'm paying a taxpayer, I'm paying the guy $100,000 a year to represent my representative, and then he's down running around and maybe he's representing a candidate I'm not supporting. What's up with that? How's that work? Seems like a conflict to me. But, you know, I understand making money, and I understand people not wanting to get a business license. Now, Mrs. LeVake, when he ran Barbara LeVake's campaign, I didn't support her because I didn't think she's honest, and I thought she's a bully. But there's, you know something? This is a funny thing. Have you noticed in all the school system, they're doing all the teaching about bullying to little kids, but the biggest bullies are in government. That's where all the education needs to go. The biggest bullies are people threatening you, these attorneys and these government bureaucrats and people like Grima, trying to push themselves and talk trash and threaten people like, I'm going to get you. Like, what's up with that? That's where the bullying teaching ought to come. And but we run around and we suck. No wonder that kids can't read or do math. They're teaching them how to not be a bully. Maybe Grima ought to be assigned by Mr. Gallagher to go teach like in the first and second and third grade and help kids not be a bully because he's a big old dude. I always think of people that are overweight, you know. I come back into the country, and I always say, when I'm over in Asia, it only takes about a week or so, and I fly back in. I thought, man, people are overinflated here in America. And I always think, something must have happened to that person, have them need to eat all the time. I like to eat. Food's my favorite thing. I can't do drugs anymore. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke cigarettes. All my friends in juvenile hall said, Lou, get that 215 card. You can smoke all the weed you wanted. I said, oh, I don't want to smoke that weed. I'm done with that, right? But sometimes people just they're addicted to food. So anyway, well, there's a lot of cases going on. Now, I got a text because I've been talking about the Tea Party meetings on this Monday night and then on 21st, and I got a note texted to me that District Attorney Hopper has said she couldn't make the 21st debate with Chris Carlos at the Tea Party meeting at the Church of Glad Tidings campus. So there you have it. So I'm sure Mr. Carlos will be there, and they will interview him, and that will be it. That will be it for that night. So because there's no race over, and they don't mention a race in Yuba County, so I don't think Clint Curry is going to come over for that. So that takes care of that. Thank you for the update and the clarification on that information. Now, something? Funny things are happening. So one of the people that is involved in the the recall of Jim Whittaker, I was told, Jim Whittaker, if you're new to this, Jim Whittaker was a physical education teacher for over 20 years at Yuba City Unified School District. And starting in the late 90s, he began to get accused of touching females in the wrong spot. And so it just went on and on and on until, and it was sometimes reported to the district and sometimes reported to Yuba City Police, and nobody did a thing about it. And so several months ago, over the last couple of years, two girls have come forward. One's a graduate now of Yuba City High, and one's still in Yuba City High. They said, hey, he did this to me or he did that to me. And so, again, not much was done about it, but the latest one, it hit the news. And what it did, because I think of the Dr. Nasser from Michigan State and his situation with the Olympic girls, Olympic young women, he confessed finally and was accused and confessed to sexually assaulting hundreds and went to jail on two different cases, two different terms. He'll die in jail. It motivated women to come forward in Sutter County and Yuba County that had been, they claimed to have been touched improperly by physical education teacher Whittaker, and Whittaker is also a Sutter County supervisor. So, he eventually, the board of Yuba City Unified School District claimed that they'd never heard a thing about it. All these years, all the different trustees, first thing we ever heard. First time, they said, my God, this is unbelievable. First thing we'd ever heard about it. And the Principal Highland, retired Principal Highland, said, I don't know anything about it. I can't remember a thing about it. Until the actual files, through a Freedom of Information Act, California Public Radio got some of the files and showed the file to Mr. Highland, and then it started to come back to him. His memory was jogged. And he said, oh, my goodness, look at that. So there's actually files on Mr. Whittaker that says that he did thus and so to different women, and they disciplined him somehow. He never lost his job. No one really knew what was going on, but they claimed they warned him, don't do that anymore. It's interesting, Man, if I touched a woman like that to have me in jail so fast, I'd be on the front page of the paper forever. But Mr. Whittaker just seemed to scoot through. So a lot of his supporters think, oh, these women, all they want is money. But actually, almost all the women don't want any money. They're not even filing a suit. They just said, it happened to me. I reported it. There's a file on me. I reported to the police. Nobody did a thing about it. What's up with that? What's up with this mandated reporting thing, where by law you could go to jail as a teacher, or a counselor or social worker? You can go to jail and get fined, or even lose. Some people told me you can lose your teaching license if you don't report properly what's going on. Now, I heard that one guy that should have reported this latest incident just was put on, lost a week of school. I thought, that's no penalty. Anyway, it's just the way the school system's run nowadays. Well, anyway, the one of the key players in this recall happened upon a woman in Walmart or around Walmart, and the woman saw her recall Whitaker or some of the recall Whitaker documents in her car and said, "Oh, are you involved in that?" And said, I'm one of the victims myself. Back in 1996 or something like that. Earlier than a lot of the other gals. I just thought, you know something, this is just unbelievable. So I thought, I hope the gal comes forward. Now, I don't blame ladies from not coming forward, because look what's happened. Nobody has done anything until just recently. There's some movement, but over all these years, people have just blew them off, just said, oh, well, no, we'll talk to them about it. We'll talk to them about it. Unbelievable. In fact, the guy that got disciplined recently made a comment to the young 14, 15-year-old girl. Well, all old guys like that do that kind of stuff. I thought, I haven't grabbed anybody by the butt lately. I'm older than Whitaker. So anyway, the beat goes on around here. Just unbelievable. So I'm going to leave this issue right there, and I'm going to go on to just give an attaboy to the President of the United States, President Trump. Who was this gal? What's that gal's name? Stormy Daniels? Is that her? You know something? I read where she has done like 100 or so pornographic films. Do you say 200? What's that?
No, she says it.
She says it.
Yeah.
Stormy Daniels, did she do 200?
Yes.
Or 100?
No, 200. 200.
Now, you would think, is she suing Trump for hurting her character? Is that what the deal is? Don't you think the damage was done? You know what I mean? You're giving blowjobs to all these guys on the film. Don't you think your character is pretty well shot by the time you get done with doing 200? Right? I mean, it's a chosen profession. I'm not demeaning her. I'm just saying you can't have it both ways. If you're going to get it on with all these people, and then all of a sudden you have a problem with the guy that ends up that you have relations with and you got paid for doing it, and then he happens to be president of the United States, so you want to dip into that cash. I think, at what point did your reputation go down the tubes? I don't know. It's fascinating. Well, anyway, I get a kick out of people, because President Trump said, I'm not interested in the salary, right? Which, what is that, $400,000 a year? I think it's $400,000, right? And so he said, I'm not interested in salary, so I guess they have to take it. So instead, he donates it. But people, it's interesting to me, when people criticize the generosity of others and they say, oh, well, yeah, it's just chicken feed to him. He makes billions, millions, right? It's like the people who say those type of things, I think are some of the cheapest people around. If I got to look at their checkbook, they probably never give anything to anybody. But they're gonna criticize. If he kept the money, then they'd criticize him as well. If he gives it away, they criticize him as well. So the fourth quarter, Trump donated his $100,000 to rebuild the infrastructure. You think, oh, what good would that do? Well, I'll tell you what. I would appreciate $100,000 to work on my street, pave my street over there on front of my house on F Street. On 11th Street. I said I could appreciate filling some of those holes over here in Marysville. May not go a long ways, but it's a kind gesture. Plus, he signed. He announced a proposal to spend $21 billion on infrastructure, and these aren't what we call shovel-ready jobs. You remember that Obama comment? This is like a planned development and upgrading of highways, bridges, etc., and cutting out all the bureaucratic nonsense. And I've heard he wants to like get programs up and going in 1 to 2 years, get them past all the permits. So spending on federal programs will lead to an investment of $1.5 trillion on roads, bridges, waterways, railways, etc. Isn't that cool? And so in the past, if you've missed this, I'm very I think it's a great thing. His previous donations, one of the first ones was for the National Park Service. I think that was number one. And that was to, we have these historic battlefield areas, like during the Civil War, that they preserve those areas instead of just building buildings on them. And so he donated $100,000 for battlefield infrastructure. The second one went to the Department of Education to fund a summer camp. And the third went to the Department of Health and Human Services to go towards the opioid crisis. So I thought it was a pretty nice gesture. I know Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think he declined his salary when he was governor of California as well. I think those are good deals. I think that's more in the spirit of public service. And my thing is to all the people who cheap shot the president over that is, if they're really into donations, why don't they donate to upgrade some of the things around the Yuba Sutter counties, like the parks or things that would benefit kids, maybe rebuild the Little League parks. Have you noticed the fact that, did you know that we have, you remember Kate Steinle, who was murdered, and the guy got free, they said he was innocent. It was just an accident, big accident. And he'd been deported many, many times, committed crime after crime after crime, but we have a lady in town here that lived here for many years, and her grandson was also murdered in San Francisco, stabbed to death by illegal aliens, and he was getting ready to go to UC Berkeley and was out celebrating with his friends the fact that he was going to be, had been accepted and going to be attending over there. They walked out of the restaurant, and these drunk guys came down the street and assaulted them. So, have you noticed that? You read something in the paper, oh, that's too bad. But if you know the people that know the people, it has more of an impact on you. So here in Yuba Sutter, we have a local citizen that her grandson's gone forever. And so I noticed in the paper here this week that a Yuba City man, illegal, is under arrest on suspicion of lewd acts with children. 45-year-old Renee Luna was taken into custody out on Nuestro Road. And the undersheriff told the Appeal Democrat that Luna had deported at least 5 times and was somehow able to obtain a current and valid California driver's license. Now, you remember that big push Governor Brown okayed illegals to get driver's licenses? And isn't it a shame that this fellow has a proper identification? He's here illegally, and he molested. He's accused of suspicion of lewd acts with children. Luna, it says, has an extensive. This is amazing. You wonder about our local crime? Listen to this. Luna, according to the undersheriff of Sutter County, has an extensive local criminal history. I want you to think about this, including assaulting a deputy 4 years ago. I don't know how if you hate police, you can ignore this, but we have deputies that are fathers, coaches, husbands, wives, that want to go home at the end of their shift. And I don't think it's cool to just, every time, like I had a brand new deputy living across from me. He wasn't on the job. He was a patrol officer for Yuba County. He wasn't on the job 2 months and broke his arm in a fight and was off duty. And so this deputy was assaulted 4 years ago. So the history of this guy, who's illegal, been deported at least 5 times, assaulting one of our Sutter County deputies, criminal threats in 2009, and numerous misdemeanor convictions dating back to 1995. I want you to think about that. It's 2018, folks. That's 23 years. Never bothered getting citizenship. Been here illegally. Maybe working under the table. Mooching off the system. Says Immigration and Customs Enforcement reportedly has placed a hold on Luna following the latest child sex crime charges. Well, thank God. You'd think that under the new sanctuary state laws, we couldn't actually contact those folks. But thankfully, I think in Yuba and Sutter counties, both our sheriffs, Parker and Durfer, are saying, you know something, we're going to work with immigration, right? I like these immigration people. I meet them over at Yuba County Jail every week, and I've gotten to know some of them, and they're great, nice people, very committed to dealing with this gnarly situation. Isn't it sad? I wonder who the children are involved in this situation. And you'd think it's one thing to have a citizen that lives in Sutter or Yuba County molesting a child. That's bad enough. But where you have a person that doesn't even belong in this country, they're here, they broke into this country, right? It's like somebody breaking into your home. Somebody the other day said, I think we ought to have open borders. I said, do you leave your door unlocked at night? No. Why would you say that? I said, well, you don't mind open borders. Why don't you just leave the door open if you don't mind people popping in and help yourself to a tuna sandwich at night and a couple beers? Just leave your front door open and spread the love. I'll be right back. We got one more hour to go. All right. During the break, there was a comment by President Trump with their dealings with China. And a lot of ignorant folks out there think, well, Trump is in favor of tariffs, and up to this point, we haven't had any tariffs. But I think I mentioned this even last week. The United States Trade Group, you can actually go on their website. They list more than 12,000 tariffs on imports to America. Those are before Trump got here. So this whole thing, like from guys like these hypocrites like Ben Sasse from Nebraska saying that, oh, Trump this and Trump that on tariffs, or these liberals on the news saying Trump is going to cause a trade war. There's been a trade war. We just have conceded over and over again. With people that Obama had in charge, they just bent over and gave everybody, they gave away the store, as they say. So if you're interested, and I mentioned this, I think, last week, we have a 350% tariff on imported tobacco. We have a 30% tariff on cantaloupe, apricots, and dates. We have for canned tuna coming into the country, if it's not from U.S., a tariff is 35%. Peanuts, 131.8% in unshelled, 163.3% shelled. You can go on and you can look this up online, and it's, so when you hear these politicians huff and puff about tariffs. I mean, sugar, we've had tariffs, I think, since the 1700s, I talked about last week. But I'm going to let that go because I have new stuff to talk about. And I don't know, maybe things just don't excite you the way they excite me. I was so stoked at President Trump announcing that he's going to shrink the Department of Education, which we didn't even have. Did you know we didn't have a federal Department of Education? That was a cabinet-level department with a representative in the cabinet, like Betsy DeVos is our current member. Was it Arnie Duncan? Was the Obama Secretary of Education? Anyway, Trump's campaign pledge was to reduce the some of these cabinet-level positions and lording it over the states and the local government. I wrote an article regarding, I think I called it perverted government education or something. It's in the Territorial Dispatch. You can go look at it if you're interested at territorialdispatch.biz. And it talks about the history of the Department of Education and how really it grew to now just under 4,000 employees. In 2016, it had a $68 billion budget. And today it's lower, a lower budget, a little bit lower. But Trump is wanting to pull education away from the federal government's oversight. And so he signed the Education Federalism Executive Order, which will launch a 300-day review of Obama-era regulations and guidance for school district, and directs Education Secretary DeVos to modify or repeal measures she deems an overreach of the federal government. When is the last time you ever heard anybody at the federal level talk about federal overreach? That's because people are a part of the swamp. For too long, he says, the president says, the government has imposed its will on the state and local governments. That's a quote from the president. To continue, the result has been education that spreads more and more and achieves far, far, far less, according to the president of the United States. Said, my administration has been working to reverse the federal power grab and give power back to families, to cities and states, give power back to localities. Way to go, President Trump. Wouldn't it be great to just eliminate the Department of Education? Do you know that the scores, the accomplishments of students was far greater before there was a Department of Education? It's just another level of nonsense. Let me talk about public education for a minute, because last week we had the Day of Silence, right? The Day of Silence was to honor and respect those who are confused about their sexuality or their transgender. That's in your public school system. In just a couple of weeks, in fact, in 17 more days, we will be honoring a pederast. A pederast is an adult male who feels a lust and a drawing towards boys, minor boys. That would be Harvey Milk. And we are forced in the state of California to honor Harvey Milk. And he had a penchant for boys. And so he had a number of them. And so he would have lovers, routine lovers that were boys, and then he'd have boys on the side, right? You can look it up on the internet, and you can get the names of them, actually. And so after Harvey was killed, then his lover, who was a teen boy that he manipulated, molested, and had routine sex with, he ended up taking his own life. So those are the type of things that are taking up the time of your kids in school. Teach them about transsexuality, homosexuality, lesbianism, having sex, Planned Parenthood type bizarre sexual behavior, bullying, honoring pedophiles. So it's no wonder that this article says 65% of public school 8th graders are not proficient in reading. 67% are not proficient in mathematics. That's an amazing statement right there, right? 65% of 8th graders in American public schools in 2017 not proficient in reading, 67% not in math, according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress test results by the U.S. Department of Education. This is not a right-wing extremist organization. This is your Department of Education that Nancy DeVos oversees, that President Trump says, let's get rid of it. It's a waste of time, and it's usurping the authority of parents. At one time in the United States, in fact, you should read my article on education, because in 1850, this is fascinating to me. I've been reading a book by Thomas Sowell called Race and Culture, and there's a chapter or two on slavery, the institution of slavery. It's so fascinating. It's the worldwide institution of slavery back in the day, how it started, what nations were really involved in it. The U.S. was not a big player in slavery, but most people here don't know what they're talking about. They just repeat something some stupid teacher told them. Oh, by the way, let me just go off the reservation here for a minute. My friend, who has a son at Marysville High School, a year or so ago was in class, and this teacher repeatedly was chanting, Hillary, 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 is Hillary this, Hillary that, love Hillary, love Hillary, love Hillary. In other words, she wasn't teaching any subject, she just was going on these rants. It happens in your schools today. It never happened in my school in my day. They just taught the subjects, and you had to master the subject. So now these people go on these agenda rants, and so finally this guy's son, who was a teenager over at Marysville High, held up an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and had written Trump on it and held it up, and he immediately got thrown out of class. I thought, well, thank God for him. I was proud. I told my friend, I said, will you tell your son I'm proud of him? Because I'm getting sick. Unless parents aren't going to sit in on all those classes. They're too busy trying to make a living. And you know that teachers aren't going to do that if you have a teacher or if you have a parent sitting in on that class. So these teachers are using up class time to rant and rave about some kind of political bent they're on. And they ought to keep their damn mouth shut. So this is an amazing thing. It says, among the 27 large urban districts for which the Department of Education published test scores, the Detroit public schools had the lowest percentage of students who scored proficient or better in math, and the lowest who scored proficient or better in reading. Now, I want you to listen to this. We're paying these schools to be open. We're heating them. We're cleaning them. We are paying for security for them. We are paying teachers to be in them. Now, I want you to listen. If you paid for your kid to be educated at a private school and they couldn't pull out better than this, you would pull your kid out of that school and ask for your money back. Listen to this. Only 5% of Detroit public school 8th graders were proficient or better in math. Only 7% were proficient or better in reading. Cleveland, 11% proficient or better in math. 10% were proficient or better in reading. Baltimore, 11% proficient or better in math. 13% better in reading. Okay in reading. Fresno, that's in California. 11% were proficient. That means okay or better in math. 14% in reading. That's like basically they're incompetent. Are you with me? Now, let me get down here and see if I want you you think, oh, I wonder if you know how kids bring homework home and you can't figure out how to do it, new math or something like that. Anyway, there's lots of other states that are horrible. Louisiana, New Mexico, horrible, horrible, horrible. But I want to tell you, you old-timers who have been through the system, if I can find what proficient practically means. So let me see if it'll pop up here. I'm scrolling down to see if I can sort this thing. I got too much information here. Okay, here we go. 8th graders. Remember when you were in 8th grade? Performing at the proficient level, here's what they should know, 8th graders. They should know the connection between fractions, percents, decimals, and other mathematical topics like algebra and functions. That's proficient. Now, we got people 7%. The rest of them failed. You get it? I mean, this is unbelievable. Okay, let me see here. Okay, that goes on to say, students at this level in math are expected to have a thorough understanding of basic level of arithmetic operations. Seems simple, right? I think I knew that stuff back then. And understanding sufficient for problem solving in practical situations. Now, reading. Think about reading now. Students performing at the proficient level should be able to provide relevant information and summarize the main ideas and themes on what they read. Seems like you read it. Like I had a teacher, one day I think it was The Red Badge of Courage. I read that book and gave her a report. She said, Lou, I believe you read the book, but you missed the whole point. Well, obviously I didn't. I read it. I could tell about the book, but I just didn't get the main theme, right? So it's something you have to master. So in the 8th grade, students performing at the proper level, they need to be able to provide relevant information and summarize the main ideas and themes. They should be able to make and support inferences about a text, connect the parts of a text, analyze text features. They should be able to fully substantiate their judgments about content and presentation of content. In other words, you ever try to BS the teacher with an essay? You just go all over and just shoot your mouth off. You don't know what you're talking about. That's what they're saying these kids are doing. So listen, folks, we're spending phenomenal amounts of money in the public education system and failing miserably. In fact, I don't have time to go through. They list the states. California is so far down the list, they don't even show up on the graph. So when you hear these ads that are running right now by the union that says, big, bad corporate America, the Koch brothers, they want to come in and take money from our schools to spend on their corporate charter schools, which there's no accountability. I want you to ask yourself this. What business, if you went in and 7% of the time your order was right at Red Robin or Applebee's or Chili's or one of the restaurants, or 7 or 10% of the time or 20% of the time your car was properly fixed when you took it in to get serviced, you go back there? But we are forced by the government of the United States to go back there. We have our money taken from us by force and given to these people who cannot educate kids. Their certificate on the wall says they're a teacher, but they cannot educate these kids. Is that interesting to you? It's a screwed up system. John Dewey, the originator of our public education system, do you know he was a socialist? I'm not going to get into the Karl Marx stuff. You can look it up, Karl Marx. John Dewey was a follower of Karl Marx. He's a guy who came up with the education system that we employ right now in the United States. It's a complete failure. And you know what it's all about? It's propagandizing and filling kids full of crap to get them to believe a certain way, right? Now, our founding fathers believed it was a huge thing that they believed in reading. So, because, for instance, they said the freedom of the press, you've heard of that amendment, the freedom of the press? That's useless if you have an illiterate society, freedom of the press. The freedom of the press only has power when you have a society that can read what's written, right? Whether it's now the press or the internet or whatever. So a very high percentage of Americans were literate prior to the inventing of the public education system, the government system in the United States, where we said the government is taking over education. Before that, people educated their folks at home. In fact, blacks, it's said in the 1850s, Thomas Sowell said in the 1850s, there were slave blacks and free blacks. The free blacks had no school to go to. They weren't welcome at schools. And they couldn't set up their own schools. So they had to learn on their own, which they accomplished somehow. But a very high percentage of free blacks were literate. That means they could read, not illiterate. In the 1850s, about the time of the emancipation. Slaves that were not free, most slaves that were not free, were forbidden to read. They wouldn't assist them to read because they felt if they could read, then they could read signs, they could read a map, and they could figure out how to escape the plantation and figure out how to get out of the country. You might think, oh, you mean they didn't know how to get out? No, they were brought to a foreign country. They had no idea where they were, and they were kept stupid. That's like instead of having a security force around the plantation so people wouldn't run off, they kept them ignorant, so they were fearful of running off lest they die out in the wilderness. So the only exceptions to that is some slave owners that were particularly kind, generous, even though they were slave owners, and church leaders, pastors, felt it important that slaves learn how to read. But with the local efforts by parents teaching their own kids and by then hiring teachers who then would help a lot of them, they'd pool their money together, we actually were doing better than what we're doing now. I want you to think about that. With all this big, massive union lobbying, basically the unions run Sacramento, the state capital, the teachers' unions. And we have... It's just like, it's interesting to me. Teachers are smart in this way. If their car dealership or their restaurant or wherever they do business, if they didn't take care of them better at a higher percentage than they take care of their kids, they wouldn't go back and do business with those businesses. And yet they expect kids to just put up, or parents put up with this complete failure in the education system. It's an amazing thing. So we'll be. Are we ready to break? We're going to take. Okay, we're going to take a break, and then we'll be back for another 30 minutes, and that'll be it for today. Okay, hang in there.
Check out the Territorial Dispatch. Papers are weekly and can be obtained free at distribution or by mail through subscription. It's the only locally owned and operated newspaper in the region. The paper is the rest of the story. And also check out the E-Territorial. It's an online version of the Territorial Dispatch which features local news and events for the Yuba Sutter, Colusa, and Nevada County areas. You'll also find daily and breaking news updates, current traffic, and weather information, along with a calendar of local events. Visit the E-Territorial at eterritorial.com.
All right, well, we're going to work on landing the plane here. We have another show coming up here at noon talking about sports. If you're interested in that, hang around. But I want to mention, again, if you're wanting to learn how to handle a gun, or to renew your concealed weapon permit, you might want to go on this website, api-academy.com, and just click on the calendar, and you can check all the classes coming up month after month after month. Right now it shows May, and there's 2 weekends in May. Both of them, they're going to be working on gun permits and handling weapons. So you can call over there at 749-0280 as well, 530-749-0280 if you don't have a computer, and just say, hey, I'm looking on getting some training on my handling a weapon, buying a weapon, need some training. Or if you want to get a job, that same number will get you hooked up with getting into the security business. So take advantage of that if you're interested, and very easy. And so that's May 12th, 13th, and May 26th, 27th for those trainings, or anytime you want. If you want to hook up with it, being a patrol officer or work somehow. Some of the folks that they have are working in the courthouses that are checking people going in and out of the courthouse, so it's not like you're driving around doing all that kind of stuff. So check that out. Also, don't forget this Monday night with the Tea Party, Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots, 6:30, to listen to the Sutter County candidates for superintendent of schools. So, okay, you got that. There's that. And I wanted to make some comments about government is not the source of our rights. I think some people get blurry-eyed when they hear that said on the media or in somewhere. But last week we talked about the fact that there's this new gender identity training that's going on in the public education system, and your kids do not have an opt-out choice. The only opt-out you have is to remove your kids from the school. You know, some things you don't believe in, you don't want your kids involved in, and so you can opt out, right? You just have to let the school know, I don't want my child involved in that. But in this case, the legislature of the state of California said in teachings on transgenderism, lesbian, you know, the whole thing, we're not allowing kids to opt out. It's mandatory. So when the Orange County trustees of the superintendent of schools of Orange County, the trustees wanted to have their legal people to go over that legislation to say, are you sure this is mandatory? So sure enough, the attorney for the Orange County Superintendent of Schools came back with the fact that, yep, it's mandatory. And then he said something very unique. I'm just going to paraphrase it for time's sake. He said, however, you may talk to your kids however you want to talk to them in the privacy of your own home. The fascinating item about that, or the aspect about that, is that he is an employee of the government giving you permission to talk to children, your own children, about matters, parenting matters, right? Now that's in direct 180-degree conflict with the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. The government does not have the authority to give you rights. Those are yours to begin with. So the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, authored primarily by a guy named Thomas Jefferson, it was intended as a simple statement of the former British colonies and gave the basis for separation from the British Empire. And so it was not based, your rights were not based on your political community, your heritage, your wealth, or the divine right of kings, but upon an idea about natural rights includes the sovereignty of people and the basis of a just government. So Jefferson began the Declaration of Independence by discussing natural rights. What are natural rights? Jefferson he describes the origin of those natural rights in the laws of nature and of nature's God. And he said they're self-evident. Natural rights spring from the very nature of man. It's like, hey, if you're breathing, you have rights. You do not need a government to say, oh, yeah, we're giving you those rights. Hey, screw them. That's what Jefferson was saying. These rights are unalienable. In other words, you can't separate them from the human being. They can't be taken away. You can't give away your rights. Any government action attempting to infringe upon those rights would, by its very nature, be illegitimate. Now, that's what's going on. Little by little, our governments, local, state, and federal, have been infringing on our rights. Like my friend Kumar that has the Washington Avenue grocery. When Darren Gale went over there and said, oh, you have a liquor license? We're not going to allow you. We're not going to allow you the right. You can sell those liquors, but you cannot sell a 16-ounce beer. That infringed upon his rights to sell products to the population that were not illegal in the United States of America. 16-ounce beer is available every state. He violated his personal rights. And those rights are not something that are for Darren Gale to bestow upon anybody. He doesn't have the right to do that. These rights, Thomas Jefferson said, exist not according to a group. So when you hear black rights, gay rights, women's rights, it's a crock of crap. No group has rights. Individuals have rights. So you form a group and you say, we have rights. We're all bicyclists. These are bicyclist rights. It's stupid. It's nonsense. People don't understand the government of the United States. Jefferson made it very clear that natural rights are not a gift of government to be arbitrarily adjusted or taken away by the stroke of a pen or the will of a tyrant. For instance, you do not have the right to guns or to carry guns. You know, it's interesting to me. The Bartholomew brothers went out over Earl Road and held up a banner that said taxes are theft. That banner would have been held up by Jefferson, Washington, Madison, all of them would have been willing to hold up that banner. And our own sheriff's department, I was embarrassed. I like our sheriff's department in Yuba County. I think there's a lot of wonderful people there. That sheriff's department went out and arrested those boys, those young men, and Pat McGrath prosecuted those people. And you know what they did? They cheap prosecuted them. In other words, they said, well, you hooked the banner to the cyclone fence. You don't remember that? You remember that? So cheap. Instead of just saying, you know something, guys, yeah, don't do that again the way you did it. You can still hold it up there. You can stand. You're not going to be able to attach it to the cyclone fence. You know why they hooked it there? Because it got heavy to hold. Jefferson made clear that natural rights are not a gift from government to be arbitrarily modified or expunged. That means done away with. But instead belong solely to every individual. Not groups, not Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, Ku Klux Klan, anybody. In describing those natural rights, Jefferson first notes that all men are created equal. It's not a result. It's not like an outcome. That's the way you're created. You get certain benefits. No individual enjoys any rights-based advantage over their neighbors due to heredity and all are held equal before the law. That's what that means. It isn't equality in outcomes, like everybody's going to get a chicken in every pot every week. That's not what it talks about. Just people have the same they're equal. They get treated equal under the law. One doesn't get any individual benefits above their neighbor. Remember, he talked about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He didn't ever say anything in there about the right to total happiness, right? But to pursue happiness. I meet a lot of people that aren't very happy. He said you can pursue happiness, but some people don't find it because they run off the rail. He says not the right to liberty to be free from want, right? But the liberty to be free from government coercion. It's like, oh, well, we have a right, we have a right to free education. We have a right to have food security. We have a right to have housing. That's baloney. All that's a crock of crap. You have a right to be free from government coercion. That's what they were fighting for. You have a right to a life to which one feels you don't have a right to a life of entitlement. You have a right to live your life as you want. If you want to paint your house blue, paint it blue. White, paint it white. You want 2 driveways? 2 driveways. You want a picket fence? Picket fence. You want a chain link? Chain link. You have a right to live it the way you want, as long as you are not overrunning your neighbor's rights. You have a right to be left alone by the government. That's what the rights that the Declaration of Independence talks about. You don't have entitlement rights to food stamps and all that crap. It's nonsense. The source and operation of our natural rights have implication for what constitutes a good and legitimate government. The entire purpose of government is to protect the pre-existing natural rights of individuals, like our right to have our own property. And if our government can't protect that, government loses its reason for existing. We just do that on our own. Oh, we don't have a police department? You can't afford the police department anymore? Then we will handle that ourselves. Governments are not founded in order to create new rights or arbitrarily dispense benefits upon preferred groups, like what they do right now. If you're black, you get special benefits and get into college if you're stupider than the average white. Or we don't have enough women, or we don't have enough lesbian women in the STEM program. Did you know that? There was something going on in California. There's special funding to make sure that there's enough homosexual women or transsexual women in the STEM classes. Is that crazy or what? Totally contrary to the Constitution of the United States. Government was not founded to arbitrarily dispense benefits upon preferred groups, but only to secure rights that exist before governments were ever created. The rights were already there. The government didn't have to come up with what the rights were or weren't. The government came after your rights. So here's the deal. The people give the power to the government. And when they decide they don't want the government to have that power, they can take it right back from them. That's just as simple as that is. The problem is the very people that we vote into office and take the oath of office, which is swearing to defend the Constitution, they can't find their Constitution with both hands. They are confused about the Constitution. Jefferson plainly said, Thomas Jefferson, when and if an established government fails to protect our natural rights, that's its only legitimate function. Not to provide welfare, not to provide education, not to provide health care. then it is the right of the people to abolish that government and establish a new government to achieve those ends. These ideas, you may think, oh, we've heard that before. Honestly, in the world at that time and continuing today, they're revolutionary ideas. But because there's been a dumbing down in our school systems, kids have no idea what they're talking about. They run around school with Che Guevara on their shirts, Karl Marx on their shirts. They don't know that Che Guevara was a communist assassin, killed people for a living, or that hundreds of millions of people have died because of the stupid, insane propaganda and doctrine and philosophy of Karl Marx. I'm telling you, what you believe can produce life or death. So, I mentioned earlier John Dewey, the progressive father of modern education theory, once wrote that liberalism is committed to the idea of historic relativity. That's completely opposed to the idea of natural rights and that government gets its power from the people. The natural rights-based political science of the founders, in which government exists to secure the natural rights of people, was traded for the rights as the gift of arbitrary and unlimited government. In other words, government today decides to give you certain rights. It's totally contrary to the Constitution. Yeah, we still claim we follow the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, but we really don't live it. According to Jefferson's model, there is no such thing. It's ridiculous. Women's rights, gay rights, Asian rights, minority rights. There's no such thing that can be granted, modified, or restricted based on nothing more than the political whims and desires of fluctuating majorities. Well, I'm telling you, if you want to know more about this kind of stuff, you can go to Hillsdale College online and you can study this. It's fascinating and it's liberating. It sets you free. And you can then see how stupid our government leaders are behaving. You can also go to KrisAnne Hall, that's KrisAnnehall.com, and she will teach you about the Constitution. In fact, I think that's where I got this information sent to me recently. Last week we talked about Facebook and how the senators, almost all the senators sat in on that Facebook interrogation. Remember that a couple weeks ago? And Mark Zuckerberg was there. I felt sorry for him. He seemed like a little pussy to me, right? A billionaire, didn't he? Did you watch him? I felt sorry for him. I thought he was going to go up and just sexually fulfill those old senators in order to get his way. He just was kind of a kiss ass, right? I felt sorry for him. I thought, here you are at the helm of this billion-dollar company, and you're a pitiful human being. And now he's really proven it again to me. Now he's hired Eric Holder to investigate Facebook's bias against conservatives. For him to sit there with a straight face and not just simply admit, like I was saying earlier about the Hopper family, why wouldn't they just admit right in the beginning that this guy is a family member and he's got problems, and then make their argument on why Amanda Hopper has nothing to do with this with this thing that this guy's talking about. Just deny it and move on. That'd have been the end of it. Now they've created this whole furor to try to benefit Amanda Hopper by saying that this unsavory opponent, Chris Carlos, pulled this all off, which is a total lie. Isn't it a shame where your district attorney, the highest legal official in your county, is basically a liar? Isn't that interesting? And is actually going to rule over you and have the authority. You know, district attorneys are very powerful. They can just send people out and have you arrested. Do you know that? That person who's a liar now about this and contrived this whole thing about how this came about to make her look good politically can do the same thing to you in court and just cook your goose. I want you to think about that. And whatever attorney or superintendent's the same, supervisors the same thing. Supervisors that lie and or deceive or play games with the truth, those people have a lot of power, and they are going to be managing hundreds of millions of dollars of tax dollars, and yet they're lying to get into office. I want you to think about that. Or a sheriff that is not a sheriff candidate, that is not transparent about their background, and is not is trying to be deceptive or throwing people under the bus. That ain't all right. That is not all right. These people are the most powerful, the sheriff, the district attorney. These are the most powerful people. These people are they're swearing an oath to uphold the law and to be people of character. And how do you unpack this one? How do you unring the bell on this one where Curtis Grima and James Gallagher, the assemblyman, are all hooked up with Amanda Hopper and others to smear these people that did not do anything to bring forth this video. This guy brought it forth on his own. Whether he's mentally ill or not, I don't know. I don't know. So it's a pretty interesting thing. But now we have Mark Zuckerberg. He hires the only attorney general in the history of the job that had letters of impeachment against him, was indicted because he lied to the Congress. This is a guy. Did you know recently the not Eric Holder, but Jeff Sessions, Department of Justice, went after the IRS, and the IRS was forced to issue an apology, and actually there's going to be a financial settlement with all these Tea Parties and conservative groups that were ripped off. But did you know that under Eric Holder, they also did supposedly an investigation and exonerated, that means cleared them all, exonerated the IRS. Sessions came in and reopened the investigation and found him guilty and is paying these various entities that were ripped off and hijacked by Lois Lerner and the rest of them, paying them millions of dollars altogether. I don't know how much each one's going to get, but pretty amazing. And so now this Eric Holder, you remember he lied about Fast and Furious? You know, the guy's a liar. He's a criminal. And yet Zuckerberg, of all the people he could have hired, hires Eric Holder to, of all people, he's going to go in and argue that there was no bias against conservatives when we just saw one group after another get slammed by Facebook. It's like, hey, we don't need Eric Holder to come up. It's like the typical liberal dudes. They urinate on your boots and tell you it's raining. That's what they do. All right, we're going to call it a day, and we have the sports guys coming in. They're going to just straighten you out on all the sports controversies, and we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening, and if you run into somebody cool this week, it might be an angel, and you don't know that for sure, but you better treat him nice. Catch you later.